Hey, what's up, ladies? It's Coach Karina. It is time to start talking about high threshold training for Body Love Core Session coming up in February, March, and April. We're going to spend 10 weeks on high threshold training. So I wanted to explain why it's so important and why we're including it, when we can find it in our workouts, when it works well, and the other kind of applications for it, and basically why we think it's important enough to include it. So as you know, when we are so in our workouts, we do a whole bunch of flexibility training, we do a ton of cardio and strength training and power. And our goal with all those exercises is constantly form, right? We're trying to cue our athletes for good form, full range of motion. Lots of exercises that we do include every piece of our body doing at least one thing. Lots of things going on at one time. And so what we need from our nervous system for that kind of training is a ton of control in order to allow good, efficient movement. And so with high threshold training, what we're trying to do is elevate the threshold, or sort of the level at which compensation starts to occur. So let's take an example of a push-up progression. So say you're doing a push-up with your hands against a wall. You feel super stable, your shoulders are well controlled, your trunk is solid, your legs are staying nice and straight, and you kind of feel like, well, I could do a lot of these because this isn't challenging me enough. So you take your hands to the next level down, say it's on kind of a high box, and you work from there. Also feels pretty easy. The lower you go with your hands, as you know, the harder that exercise gets, right? There will be a threshold at which a point at which your form starts to break down. So say you're with your hands on a box and your feet on the ground, and your shoulders start to feel a little bit tired, and your trunk, maybe musculature, maybe you're reminding yourself, oh yeah, don't let my back sag, but you're keeping all of it under control. But you can start to feel some fatigue come in when you're into your 10th, 12th repetition, maybe you're doing a minute, and you start to feel tired. So that's a good challenge, because you can do it. You feel challenged in the systems that are designed to be challenged by the exercise, but you're still successful. Your form's not falling apart. If, however, I put your feet on the box and your hands on the ground and said do push-ups in that position, most of us at some point would break down. Maybe that's a little bit too much, and so the shoulders start to cave in, the back maybe sags, the legs aren't so straight anymore. The brain is using everything, is relying on the muscles that are doing that are the strongest to push through that pattern, and it's not able to utilize, the system is not able to utilize all the musculature that should support it. So, and no matter how much you cue, get your back out of that position, don't let your back sag, keep your shoulders open, all those things will fall apart if we're above the threshold that the nervous system has at that moment for that particular movement. So what we're trying to do with high threshold training is elevate that threshold and get it as high as we can, so that with the strength and power training that we do, when we add resistance and we add speed, the nervous system can handle it and still have quality movement. As soon as movement starts to break down, that exercise needs to be ratcheted back a few percent to a point where the athlete can complete it successfully, like with good form, good control, and that allows the nervous system control to be better. So of course we're training strength and flexibility and cardiovascular endurance and all that sort of thing with our workouts, but we also need to include some nervous system training, and that's basically what this is. Let's get the brain to recruit all the muscles available to it for a particular movement. So that's what high threshold training is. Sometimes there's resistance applied to the movement, but it's mostly to sort of facilitate learning the quality of the movement, as opposed to just just loading it up. And we're using it as that. You guys have heard me talk about before about that foundational layer. We want good quality foundational movement, functional control before we add strength and power training. And right now we're not going to stop strength and power exercises in Kaya workouts, but we are going to include, as part of warm-ups or as part of prepping for a round, high threshold exercises, so that the control, when you do add resistance and speed to the movement, so the control gets better. So what you may find after practicing these exercises is not necessarily you won't necessarily feel tired physically. Sometimes it's a little exhausting cognitively, because you have to think about what you're doing. Often it feels awkward in the beginning, and you practice the movement and then it gets much more stable. That's the time to then add the load and the speed. So the areas of the body where we can focus the most and we can get the most bang for our buck out of this are in the scapula or shoulder blade area, and in the pelvis. So all the muscles around the hip and trunk. In terms of supporting our movements, whenever we're moving, we're applying basically any upper extremity or lower extremity exercise that we do requires good stability from the anchor point. So if you've got a weight in your hand and you're going to do anything with it, there has to be good control from your shoulder blade in order for that movement to be effective like you want it to be. You don't necessarily, we're not going to be building strength with these particular exercises. The resistance isn't high enough for the muscle adaptations to occur. However, you do get stronger in producing your movement because there's less waste. There's less energy leaks. You're not producing, your body is only producing the movements that it needs for that, or only recruiting the muscles that it needs for that movement to be safe and effective. So I hope it adds a lot to your training. It really has been a missing link in my training personally myself, as well as working with other athletes and patients. I find that it's a way to kind of fill in that gap between just stretching and just warm-ups to the high level stuff that we're asking of our athletes during our workouts. So that's why we're doing high threshold training. I hope that helps explain it a little bit. Each week, look for exercises to add into the workouts as warm-ups or as prep for certain rounds. Follow the YouTube channel Kaya Moves and the Instagram at Kaya Moves. There's going to be an exercise of the week and also some additional coaching, cueing and instruction for you. So hit me up with any questions, comment on all this stuff so we can make it a good conversation and you guys can get as much as you can out of the high threshold training. Hope you enjoy it. Take care.